Okay, AP Government, this is our last week before the AP exam. So we've got a couple of required assignments, but a lot of optional things for those of you that are prepping for that exam on Monday, May 11th at 3 p.m. So we're going to have our new normal, or it's not even new anymore. With this is the fifth week, I guess, that we've been doing this. The one exception is the test this time. I'm going to let you take anytime Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday. And the reason why I'm doing that is I know some of you just want to get it out of the way earlier and be able to focus on reviewing for the AP exam after that. So if that's you and you want to take it on Wednesday, feel free. Or if you're like, nope, I am a procrastinator and I want to take it at 11 p.m. on Friday because I really like it when Mrs. Thompson stays up late and then emails me at like 10:55 to remind me that I haven't taken it yet. I'm totally happy to have that be the case for you as well. So any of those options for this week. As always, I'll be in my Google Meet from 11 to 1. On Monday, I suppose that's not the case because technically you don't have school on Monday, but I imagine I'll still kind of be in there anyway because I was in there today, which is Friday, and you don't technically have school today either. So I will be there regardless. On Monday of this week, you have your quiz. The reason why it's early in this week is because we had to condense 2 weeks into one, because we have those 2 weeks of teacher prep time for distance learning, and then the AP exam only pushed itself back by a week. We then lost a week essentially of instruction before the AP exam. So that's why this week is a little bit more jam-packed than usual. And I know you don't technically have school on Monday, but if you're not taking the exam, this is a lighter week than usual to kind of recognize that. But if you are taking the exam, that's our top priority, is we want to get you that college credit as efficiently as we possibly can. So on Monday, you've got that Chapter 18 quiz, same setup as usual. I'm going to make sure to include a little bit of review on civil liberties in this one because that's the big unit on the test that we haven't been covering the past few weeks. There are 3 units on the exam. It's Foundations of American Government, which we've been talking about a lot through the Federalist Papers. It's Civil Rights and Civil Liberties, which we're going to need to do some review on, and then Interaction Between the Branches, which we've definitely been covering really well the past few weeks. Then you've got your first optional assignment. So if you are taking the AP exam, I would strongly recommend doing the live practice version that the College Board is publishing in a YouTube video on Monday, May 4th at 2 p.m. So you've got a link in there that will take you to the College Board's YouTube channel for AP Government and Politics. And at 2 p.m., if you want to practice like the exact timing that they'll have, you can log in and do their practice version of the exam. If you're like, I really want to do a practice version and get feedback, but I'm not really into sitting down and doing it at that exact time, I will take the questions that they put in that video and create a Schoology version of it that you are welcome to do as a practice version and turn in. On May 5th, they're going to publish a video that talks about scoring guidelines. So I will make sure you have access to that video. And then also I will use that video as I score any stuff that you submit online. If you decide that you want to do it live and then you see my version that's online and you're like, well, I'm not going to do it again because I already did it live, feel free to upload, like email me whatever you did for that live version and I can use the scoring guidelines to assess it and kind of see if it matches up what you saw with the scoring guidelines. So that is your first optional practice exam on Monday, May 4th at 2 p.m. Then on Tuesday, Seta, McKinnon, and Ian, you are going to have your Federalist 10 presentation. It's one Federalist paper that we haven't taken a look at yet. So Seta, McKinnon, and Ian, you need to send me that stuff on Monday. So again, Seta, McKinnon, and Ian, you need to send me your presentation, activity, and assessment on Monday so that I can post it on Tuesday. Because if you've created a quiz, for example, then I need to turn that into a Schoology quiz. So you 3 need to make sure to get that to me on Monday. Then we'll have Review Jeopardy to get you ready for your test that you can take as early as Wednesday if you would like. If you want to play Jeopardy live with us, we had about 10 people who did that last time. Jump into my Google Meet at 11:10 a.m. Otherwise, the rounds are posted in Schoology for you to practice as well. Then on Wednesday, Olivia and Kennedy, you'll have your lesson over national security policy making, which is Chapter 18. So Olivia and Kennedy, you need to send that to me on Tuesday so that I can post it for everybody on Wednesday. Then there's another practice exam that the College Board is doing. So we have one practice exam on the 4th, then they post the scoring guidelines on the 5th. Then they have a second practice exam on the 6th, and they'll post the scoring guidelines for that on the 7th. So like with the first one, you can take it live at 2 p.m. using that link to their YouTube video that they'll have for it. Or I will turn it into a Schoology quiz that you can practice that way and talk about the scoring guidelines and that kind of stuff. Then on Friday, policymakers test. Again, you can take this Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, but Friday is our deadline for it. And it's going to be the same setup as our last test, where you've got multiple choice questions, an argument essay, and a concept application FRQ. Then you're going to kind of spend the weekend reviewing for the AP exam. So you can pop into office hours on Friday or on Monday, because Monday office hours are before the exam starts, with any final questions that you have. You can check the Schoology resource folder for old Jeopardies and like practice quizzes and things like that. But what you want to keep in mind is the key for this exam and this new setup is to have your resources ready and to know where things are. So it's not necessarily to have every Federalist paper and every amendment memorized, but to know that you have access to those quickly. So if they were to ask you a question about incorporation, for example, maybe you're like, oh my gosh, what is incorporation? So incorporation is the idea that the Bill of Rights initially only applied at the federal level. Only the national government couldn't establish a religion, for example, with the Establishment Clause for the First Amendment, freedom of religion. Then case by case, literally Supreme Court case by Supreme Court case, that was applied to the states. So if you had an incorporation question that asked you about the incorporation of civil liberties, you might say Gideon versus Wainwright incorporated the Sixth Amendment right to a lawyer to the states. So what that means is before Gideon versus Wainwright, the right to a lawyer only existed at the federal level, and that case applied it to the states. McDonald versus Chicago was another required case that you had this year that took the Second Amendment right to bear arms and applied it to the state level. Not all rights have been incorporated. So we got to be careful about using the word all or none or any of those extremes or those absolutes. The Third Amendment, for example, has never been incorporated at the state level. That's your freedom from quartering soldiers, because it's never really been an issue. So there hasn't been a Supreme Court case about it. So those are things that you might want to be reviewing when it comes to civil liberties and civil rights, because it's been so long since we've talked about those. Interactions between branches of government, again, we've been covering a ton. So my prediction for the AP exam questions, and I'll talk more about this in a video next week, is that the argument essay will be about foundations of American government and interactions between the branches. Those naturally tie in with one another. And interactions between branches of government is the largest portion of the exam. Like in their published information, they've said that's the largest portion. So it makes sense that their longest question would cover that. They don't want to leave out civil liberties and civil rights, though. So most likely the concept application FRQ will be about civil liberties and civil rights. And again, the difference between those, civil liberties are individual freedoms and civil rights are freedoms that are given to groups. So if you are being discriminated against on the basis of race or gender or religion, that would be a civil rights issue because it's based on your group identity. Whereas if your right to bear arms is being taken away just because, like they're saying that all people aren't allowed to buy this handgun, for example, that would be a civil liberty because you're not being discriminated against as a like on the basis of your group identity, it's just your individual rights are being taken away. So civil liberties and civil rights, a good thing to remember the distinction between those two. Those Supreme Court cases that we've covered all year are not explicitly going to be covered on the exam. There's no FRQ that's going to specifically ask you about them. However, they make great examples for civil liberties and civil rights questions. So I would still have your Supreme Court packet handy so that you can take a look at that if they were to ask you anything that maybe you could pull that in for an example. So just some pieces of advice, and we'll talk a lot more about those next week. For the week after that, just to give you a preview and to be like, oh my gosh, please don't give me more when I'm trying to prep for the other AP exams. I get it. That's okay. Monday, May 11th, the day after Mother's Day, by the way. So don't forget your mom or your mom-like figure in your life on Mother's Day. I don't know if you can hear Sherlock, but he agrees it's important to do. And so that's on the day before your AP exam. Then the AP exam is at 3 p.m. on that Monday. I get your AP exam answers. So I could, for example, turn those into a test grade or give you feedback on them. So they are actually going to give me your exact answers. Whatever you upload, they will give me those files. And part of that is so I can check to see if it doesn't sound like your voice. And if there's suspicions of cheating, that's something that I have to report to the College Board. So please don't put me in that weird situation. Then the rest of that week and the following week, so I guess that's technically week 6 and 7. You are going to be doing a film analysis. So you'll select a film that somehow relates to government, and you've got 2 weeks to watch it and to then do a short writing assignment where you basically explain how it connects to the Constitution and to the branches of government, and then you analyze political ideology from a few different characters on there. So it's not meant to be too taxing. It's meant to be a summative grade that kind of shows what you have learned and to get us through those few weeks. Because I do have to give you something to do or I get in trouble, but I do not want this to be the focus of your energy after May 11th. You need to be focusing on those other tests and getting college credit. So I appreciate all of the hard work that you have put into this class up to this point. I know it's been a lot and some of you have been frustrated. And so I just wanted to emphasize the things that we'll be doing afterwards that recognize all of that hard work that you have done. So as always, if you have any questions, let me know. Drop into my Google Meet office hours, send me a Schoology message or an email, and I'm looking forward to get you ready for that AP exam on May 11th at 3.